Well, hopefully by now, most of you are familiar with Ted in California that is creating a Kirby Shakeout bag conversion kit. So part one of the video was posted a few days ago, and let's take a look at what's in this nifty little mystery box. So this should be part two, or maybe round two, or maybe what's in here is going to be so good it'll end up being the final round. Guess we'll have to find out as we open it up and test it. What goodies do we have? Let's see whatever's in there. And we have a couple of different bags. Wow, look at this. Okay, item number one. Bag number one. Isn't that nice? Dual Sanatronic 50. Let me make sure you can, oh good. So you can see that pretty well. So this bag right here, because you can't really tell, is made out of very, very thin material. Now the material really appears to be pretty strong. Just so you can see that. That's not messing it up. But it's very, very lightweight. Honestly, it is, that is very strong. Yes. All right, that's good. Let's see, item number two in here is this much, well, it's the same bag as what I've tested before. This is a much, much thicker material. Definitely much, much thicker material. And you've seen this tested already. Nice little red stripe at the top. Here is, let's see, item number three in the box of magic. Oh. Now I'm not sure exactly what this represents. I may have to get more information on that. You know, I'm seeing that maybe there used to be some kind of logo here, and it looks like there's a big K there. So I don't know if this was maybe an original bag. Well, it smells okay. So I'm not familiar with every single bag Kirby's ever made. So if this is an original bag from way back when, maybe it is. We'll have to see what's going on with that. And we have, well, you all know what this is if you're a aficionado here. This looks like the emptor and fill tube from a Heritage series, Heritage 2 series. I've got a couple of these, so kind of familiar with that. Nice flexible material here. All right, that's great. And now we have what I think is probably going to be the piece de resistance, and here is a Dual Sanatronic 50 emptor, obviously, but from here up, this has now been changed. Rather than the newer type of fill tube material that used to be very, very stiff, he switched it to this older, like G series and Heritage series fill tube material, which is really very nice. And we no longer have the F connector. So be very interested to actually test this just as far as usability goes. So that looks pretty nice. And then the last thing we have in here, oh my, you've got lots of colors here. Stretch that down here. Lots and lots of colors. Look at all the colors that you could choose from. If I can get that in the camera there. Geez. So many different colors you can make this bag material out of. That's really something. And of course you have thickness differences between them. So you have 21 Wale over here and 14 Wale over there. And this is, well, it's nice material. This is very thin, hence the 21 Wale, and this is much thicker. I mean, you can see the differences visually, even though you can't feel them the way I can. So lots and lots of fabric choices. And let's see, I wonder, oh, so what's in the little mystery envelope is an old bag spring, an old rusty bag spring. And we got a little topper right here. Okay, so with all this great stuff that was in the box that really wasn't so much of a mystery, I need to get to retesting all this stuff. So let's start our airflow measurements. Now I've got an awful lot of them to do, so to be honest with you, it is going to be kind of complicated and it might make your head spin a little bit. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible, and I'll put various measurements and comparisons in the video itself to try to make sense of it all, because it will be a lot of tests. We're going to start out with the D50 Emptor with the older fill tube material and connector itself, the bag connector itself. It's the non-F type, and we do have a couple of fill tubes to test, whether Ted wanted me to test them or not. There's a Heritage fill tube right there, and Emptor with the old connector, and you can see the three different bags. Although I don't think the 513 bag is necessarily going to get tested because the spring isn't in it, and I don't really want to sew the spring back in. Although he did send me one. It's all nice and rusty. So originally, I tested this thing in part 1, that is just the D80 itself, naked, with no Emptor on it, and we're at 137.2 CFM. This is just for my reference testing geeks out there. I am running probably about 0.6 to 0.7 volts higher than what I was doing in the previous rounds of tests. So my 137.2, I tested this at 137.7. So that's about a half a CFM higher. And that does not, by the way, mean that everything's going to be a half CFM higher. It's not like an absolute value. It's more or less like a ratio difference. But we have really, really closely a great match to part 1 setup. And that's very, very important because I don't want the numbers to skew all over the place. All right, so that's enough yapping. Let's get to testing, and we're going to start out with the D50 with that older fill tube and bag connector and see where we are, see if it makes any difference to the previous stuff that we have. And I'm going to simulate the fill tube being in the bag by actually holding the hose straight. I'm not going to pull it up. I'm just going to hold it straight so it doesn't flop around everywhere. Okay, the D50 Emptor fill tube got a peak of 4587 times our conversion factor. And we are at 119.7. So we'll call that 120 CFM. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this out to the old Heritage style, and let's see what the difference is. Next up, the Heritage style Emptor fill tube and topper. Let's see what it does. Remember, the first one we did was, let's just round it and say 120. So if we remember about 120, this older style setup gets us slightly more. Look at that, 121.3. So realistically speaking, that's a pretty insignificant difference, but it's a difference, and you gain definitely more than 1 CFM. Maybe I should call this the head-to-head emptor comparison. All right, so the difference between these two emptors, obviously, big styling difference. If you need to have the old style look, if that's what you want, go ahead and use the older style D-series look. You're fine. You'll be down about 1.6 CFM. If for some reason you want to use this style look, this style emptor, the airflow path is just a tiny bit better. So you will gain 1.6 CFM over that. Now, is that really going to make a whole lot of difference in your vacuuming? No, it won't. So don't worry about it. Bottom line is, you probably are going to want something like this, but realize that this one, just by its very nature, is going to slightly limit the CFM. But the nice thing is now we know. Now I've fitted the Acorn Color 21 Wale, that's the thinner outer bag, to the D50 emptor. And if you remember, we had to solve a fitment issue. So now we have the bag strap right here, the correct length. So if we line up the center of the holes of the bag here in the fill tube topper, that the top of the inner bag literally matches or fits very well to the top of the outer Acorn bag. So this is as high as you can go in this Acorn bag. You can't stuff anything up here. And also, if you go down to the bottom, we have great fitment down here as well. The bottom of the bag is nearly flush with the bottom of the outer bag. So this, I've already done a test fit with this charcoal bag, and it fits in very well, goes in and out easily. It does not crunch the top nor the bottom of a full-size Kirby bag. So let's put this on the D80 and measure it, and then I have to put the bag in and then measure that as well. Now, since the thinner outer bag is hooked up to the D50 emptor, let's see what the airflow is. Remember, no inner bag just yet. Good enough sample. So let's see what we got. Okay, 118.2. And by the way, I've done this test a couple of times, depending on if I'm fiddling with the bag just a little bit or I recline the handle slightly. That number can go up a little bit, but that is just not that much airflow loss. And I also will say this, when this bag is inflated, there's literally hardly any back pressure. I mean, this bag pushes in really easy. It is not, it's not ultra firm like bags that have more resistance. And now we have the charcoal bag inside the outer Acorn bag. So let's see what we get. Fully loaded system, so to speak. 468 times our conversion factor, and we are at 116.6 CFM, so almost 117 CFM. Now I have the thicker 14 Wale charcoal bag installed. No inner bag though. So let's see what this pulls. Okay, 4370, and let's go and convert. So we're at 114.1 CFM. Now we need to go and put a bag inside. Now the charcoal bag is inside the charcoal colored bag. So anyway, this is the full and complete setup. So let's see what it tests at. And I'm going to do two tests here. One's going to be just the regular way that I run it. And then I'm going to go and unzip the zipper in the back to see how much CFM we actually gain by opening up the rear zipper completely. So this is rear zipper closed. All right, rear zipper closed. Let's just call it 112 CFM. Now I'm going to open the rear zipper completely. Okay, 4350, and we're at 113.5 with the rear zipper open. So the difference was only about 1.5 CFM. All right, let's change gears. We go to the Heritage setup with its fill tube and disposable bag adapter top. And a particular note that this thin outer bag here does have its own bag strap, but I'm just not using an inner bag. And in some pre-testing, I have found that I got a little more airflow than I was expecting, and it's probably due to the fill tube being held in a more vertical manner than what it was before when I wasn't using a bag. Anyway, let's see what this tests like without an inner bag. That's going to give us quite a surprisingly good result. So here we are at 122.8 CFM. And for the eagle-eyed people of you watching this video, you're going to recognize that this is just a little bit higher, a tiny bit higher than with the bag actually being off. But again, the strap in there is holding the fill tube in its more natural position, I suppose you could call it. Now let's go ahead and put the bag in. Now I have the charcoal bag installed, so let's see how much CFM we lose. Okay, 45.67, and that brings us up to about 119.2. So we're losing, a couple of CFM by putting the charcoal bag in, which is normally what you would expect. Okay, now I need to go and put the charcoal outer bag on and see what that does on the Heritage Emptor. Final stretch of measurements. Aren't you happy? So, Heritage Emptor, and we have the thick charcoal outer bag. No inner bag yet. Okay, 42.91, and we're down to, well, look at that, 112, 111.99. That'll round to 112. So now let's go ahead and put the charcoal bag in and see what we get. Hopefully we're now at the end of all these CFM tests. So we have the charcoal bag inside here, and I'm actually doing a verification round of this. Initially, it just didn't seem like the double bag scenario, that is the inner charcoal bag and the outer thicker bag here, just didn't really seem to mesh that well together. So I played with the bag installation and tried to smooth everything out as much as possible. So let's see what we get. Definite decrease, and we are down to 105. So I'm going to run this, and then I'm going to unzip this bag, and we're going to watch the CFM go back up. I'm leaving both bags alone though. I'm just going to unzip the zipper. How interesting. So 45, 429. So now we're actually back up, geez, like 10 CFM from 105 something to, well, almost 116, and all I did was just unzip the bag. The charcoal bag is still installed in here. I have not removed it. So what this seems to say to me is, for this setup, that the charcoal bag, the inner bag in here, can't expand like it wants to in this particular bag configuration. So it's getting constricted. It wants to expand and be a little bit bigger, and the thinness from side to side of this outer bag is constricting it, and it's unable to breathe as well as it should be able to. So that was certainly a very interesting result. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of worn out with all that airflow testing. So let's shift gears for a minute as I try to sum all this stuff up. We have a lot of fabrics, and more importantly, fabric colors that can be chosen to go and make these older style Kirby bags. So on the left, you have the Corduroy 21 Wale, and that is a thinner fabric, comes in an unbelievably wide range of colors, and you saw the acorn style in this particular thin bag that I was testing. That was the thinner 21 Wale. And over here on the right you have the 14 Wale, and you can see this is Robert Kaufman Fabrics. That's where the fabric comes from. And the thicker one was down here, this charcoal type, and it's definitely much thicker. So I'm doing this in 4K so that if you have the ability to zoom in, like say on your phone, or you're watching it on a big TV, you can see a massively wide range of colors and also thicknesses in this case. Now let's go ahead and compare the differences between the thicker 14 and the thinner 21 Wale. And I'm not really talking about the differences necessarily between like colors. I'm talking about performance differences and just general look and feel. So starting out with what we got when we use this D50 Emptor, we ended up getting some pretty good results with both bags, to be sure. However, with a full HEPA setup using the charcoal bag, we still had about a 4.6 CFM between these two bags. The thicker one puts more back pressure on the machine. It is small. I mean, come on, it's, you know, a handful of CFM. Literally, it's less than 5 CFM. So it's not really that big of a deal, but it does exist. And, you know, that's because, frankly, the material is more thicker, more heavy duty, and it doesn't let the air flow through quite as well. However, this bag doesn't expand or open up nearly as well as this one does. So when I put the inner bag inside, and you can see just how wide one of the full-size bags is, well, there's somewhat of a problem with the more restrictive 14 Wale material. So if you have one of these older machines, especially if it's, you know, going to use an Emptor like this, then you probably want, for aesthetic reasons, a thinner looking bag that more matches something like this. So, and as far as I'm aware of, this is a 14 Wale, and I think it's a 513 bag that might be a replacement 513 bag, but it's still obviously a Kirby original something or other in here, because you can see the remnants of the logo. But you have 14 Wale versus 14 Wale. So really, really similar general designs. And Ted wanted me to let you know what a great quality zipper he's actually using. It's this YKK, and it is very nice. Very, 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 very heavy duty. It's not thin or cheap or cheesy whatsoever. And this bag is not in its final form because we still have to go and fiddle around with the bag hanger a little bit. That's a minor detail, no big deal. But you should note that when you're on the D50 M-Tour, that there's almost a 5 CFM difference. The spring, if you wanted me to mention something about the spring here, this is the spring, the rusty spring, that came out of this bag here. More importantly, down here. See, you can see the matching rust. And what was so nice is Ted went and frankly put together some springs so the tension wasn't so insane as I've experienced on my older Kirbys, especially my D80. I mean, you practically have to use a pair of pliers and a screwdriver. It's really something. This is very, very tight to put on the M-Tour, and he went and designed something to where it's much easier. Now, it's not so loose that it's going to fly off. I don't want to imply that in any way, shape, or form. It's just that it's much easier to work with. So that's really great, and kudos to him for actually going, you know what, maybe we just don't need spring tension so tight that it seems like it's going to crush something on the M-Tour or make something, I guess, hurt ourselves when we try to install it or uninstall it. And I had to do a lot of installation and uninstallations of these particular springs. Let's see. So this type of material, let me concentrate a little bit on this. So personally, I can use either one of these. Okay, it's no big deal. Small performance difference. This is a much thinner material, this 21 Wale. Now, some people might go, well, it doesn't look original, the design is different, I don't want to use it. That's fine. For the people who are looking for something specifically to be a little different, this is a lot more flexible. Obviously, it's got, different pattern on it. You may or may not like that, but this is very sturdy. It's sturdier than you think. I'll liken it to this. This is like wearing corduroy pants. I grew up 1960s, 1970s, and in the 1970s, I wore a lot of corduroy pants. This is like corduroy pants. It's thick, very heavy duty. This is just like a thick shirt. So it isn't something like maybe a silk shirt or something like an undershirt. It's not that thin, but it's definitely thinner. So this is a lot more flexible. It will hang differently, to be sure. Some people may not like that per se. This mimics the original material very well, and it's definitely stiffer. So what I noticed was, using this material, one of the reasons why this had higher airflow than this was because when you put in the full-size bag, this was so narrow and stiff that the bag simply couldn't expand fully in here. It expanded much easier. So in addition to the thinner material, which will wear differently than the thicker material over time, over a number of years, you will get a little bit more airflow, but you're gonna have to, I guess, pay attention in general to how you treat this. You can't be as rough on it as you can with this. So if you're somebody that your original bag has heavy wear on it and, I don't know, maybe holes someplace, and this one, here we go. So you've got various pulls all over the place. Maybe you want to stick, frankly, with the heavier duty bag. But if you treat your stuff really gently and you want something like this, and I'm not saying that a whole lot of people will, that this could possibly be an option. So let's move on to using this M-Tour. I'm not expecting, frankly, a lot of people to probably use this type of M-Tour. It doesn't really fit a 500 series machine or D50, D80, but if for some reason somebody has something like this lying around and they go, you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and say, buy one of these bags and just put it on this M-Tour, just because, just for something to do. Well, there was a problem. And it wasn't fitment, but it was usability. What I mean is, when I went to put on the thinner 21 Wale onto this emptor and use it, you saw that the airflow was actually pretty good. Full HEPA setup here was 119.2 CFM. The bag inflated properly, both inner and outer bag, and didn't have a problem at all with the CFM. I mean, 119.2, that's great. Then I went and put it in the thicker 14 Wale, and there was a big problem. So I checked these measurements, not once, not twice, but 3 times. That is, I took the bag in and out over and over and over again and tried just kind of massaging it around the tube in different ways to see how I could get the most airflow possible. And it was immediately apparent that this setup here became simply too restrictive. Now, it's not that bad. As you saw in the video, this full setup with the inner bag installed did 105.3 CFM. But that's just, it's too much airflow loss for me. Might be just fine for you. If you're okay with that, that's all right. But I really would like to see something a lot closer to 120. I mean, I can live with maybe 115, but when I see 105, and I've checked this and played with it over and over and over again, the big thing that got me was, as you saw in the video, is when I went, and of course this is unzipped at this point in time. I started with it zipped, obviously, and then I unzipped it. And when I unzipped it, the CFM jumped from 105.3 to 115.6. That's a 10 CFM jump. And what that means is no matter what I did, this bag simply cannot inflate properly with this thinner, more restrictive bag. And I mean thinner this way. And it just didn't work out very well. So this probably doesn't really affect anybody, because I don't know, I really couldn't imagine somebody using this type of setup. So I'm blathering on and on and on to probably one person and most likely 0 people about using it in this manner. So if you have to use this, use a thinner bag material, or maybe a larger bag. I mean, either one of those will definitely make a difference. So I cannot recommend the 14 Wale made in these dimensions. If you make one a different size, it'll affect the measurements. With using a Heritage emptor, it saps the performance too much. That's just what it comes down to. Final words. These are still in the development stage. That's why this video is called Part 2. And Part 3 will be coming soon. And whatever changes Ted wants to make to these bags will be made. And then I will have a chance to test the final version. And we can go over final airflow tests and usability at that time. But for right now, my impressions are both these bags are fine. They work just great, no problem, especially when you use this type of emptor. And I'm going to guess that most of you viewing this video who are interested in something like this probably want the thicker 14 Wale bag because of the general look, feel, durability, so on and so forth. However, if there are any of you that are interested in the thinner bag for whatever reason, can you let me know in the comments? Because it will actually let Ted know what he needs to consider having available for a production run. So I know this video was just unbelievably long, and some people were looking for some kind of a live vacuuming video, but bottom line is this has been fun and challenging in the development stage of trying to figure out what actually works best and possibly even what is more aesthetic. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.